The LIV Golf Series has turned into a bit of a thorn in the PGA Tour's side, as it continues to nab some of its most important players. But to combat that, Jay Monahan has devised a new strategy that'll not only see them being more competitive, but also raise prize money to entice players. Is it enough to dissuade the pros from joining Greg Norman's ranks though? Well, let's dive straight in and discuss. First up, LIV Golf's big money has got the PGA Tour on the back foot. The idea of a Saudi league has only been around for a couple of years, but even within that short span of time, it's somehow managed to completely shift the power dynamics in golf. Like, of course, the PGA Tour is still the more popular entity, and most top players do prefer to be its members. It's just that the tour lost its grasp on the monopoly it had, and now golfers have a genuine way out if they don't feel like they're being treated right. For instance, it all started with Phil Mickelson, who, albeit getting a massive $200 million paycheck, already had a bunch of issues with the status quo. While his decision to switch sides probably had more to do with money than anything else, you can't discard the possibility of the image rights problems acting as the catalyst. You've got to admit, though, that Greg Norman's new adventure has definitely ruffled some feathers among the golfing top brass. We mean, you don't even have to dig deep, as their weekly rants about how this breakaway league's gonna spell doom and gloom for the game are enough proof that they're frustrated. Plus, there's the whole issue with the massive contracts that come out of the bottomless pit of cash that is the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund. Besides, the tour's commissioner, Jay Monahan's already said that if this is an arms race and if the only weapons here are dollar bills, then the PGA Tour really can't compete. Next up, the tour continues to lose players to massive LIV contracts. Now, obviously, Mickelson's case makes sense, as he's already grown tired and frustrated with the PGA Tour over the years. That said, things actually start to look bad for them when you look at some of the other players that have defected. Take Brooks Koepka, for example. He was easily one of the top members of the tour and had many years ahead of him. What's more, he even made some super long and passionate speeches about why he thinks Greg Norman isn't being fair to the game with his league. We mean, you just have to go look at his press conference during the 2022 US Open. And honestly, it was such a surefire thing that he'd never betray the tour to join something he obviously hates so much. But the thing is that you can't write Norman's cunning negotiation skills off. Like literally days after making that impassioned speech, Koepka was an LIV Golf player. Oh, and of course, he got a very big contract to join. To be fair though, most people wouldn't be able to resist that sort of money either, as it's more than some top players make during their entire careers. So we don't blame anyone like Koepka or Dustin Johnson. Besides, the future looks bright for the Saudi golf project, and who knows, maybe it'll be a dominant force in the sport a few years down the line. But the PGA Tour still has a lot of things going for it. Of course, you wouldn't expect an entity as big as the PGA Tour to just sit back and let someone walk all over them. Besides, they've had plenty of competition prop up in the past as well. We mean, even Greg Norman has tried to start his own series a couple times back in the 90s. It's just that this is the first time that they've come up against something that's as well funded as the LIV Golf Series. Now, Monahan's already said that they can't compete with Norman's startup purely on the basis of money. Having said that, the tour's actually got a lot more going for it than the breakaway league. So, in theory, they don't have to spend astronomical amounts of cash to make sure that their players don't desert them. For instance, the legacy and goodwill that they've built alone are enough to rival anything else. Plus, perhaps that's one of the biggest reasons behind them not completely failing to retain players. Like, it's a lifelong dream of some of these golfers to be a part of the tour and compete in all these prestigious events. And no matter how many big contracts you offer or how much money you throw at some of these pros, they wouldn't make the switch. Tiger Woods, for example, was offered a contract with $1 billion, but he still didn't turn his back on the very thing that brought him to where he is. So yeah, they've definitely got some leverage over Norman when it comes to sheer spectacle. Also, that doesn't mean that the tour isn't going to invest money. Okay, so all this talk about how much money the Saudi leagues got almost makes it look like the PGA Tour is broke, but we all know that's not true. In fact, they've got plenty of room to improve their player contracts and increase tournament prize money. It's just that before this, no one was really testing their resolve to do this. Obviously, it's not billions of dollars, which by the way is pocket change for the Crown Prince. As we mentioned earlier, they don't need to invest the same amount as the LIV Golf Series because again, they've got that extra bit of legacy and goodwill going for them. So while they haven't started offering tons of cash to everyone, it's still a pretty substantial jump all things considered. Let's take a look at this year's prize money. For instance, Jay Monahan's already come out and said that they plan on increasing the purses at 8 events during the 2022-23 season to an average of around $20 million. In comparison, Norman's league is offering $25 million at 7 of the 8 total invitationals, with the finale in October having a prize pool of $50 million. Now, when you compare these two numbers on paper, they don't actually seem that different. We mean, a difference of $5 million isn't that vast in golfing terms. The real issue for the tour arises when you start to count those $200 million contracts that it seems to be be dishing out without even giving it an afterthought. So, as things stand, it's anyone's game right now, with players having to decide whether or not they want to go for legacy or financial safety. That said, the PGA Tour is also going to switch up its format. We all know that increasing the prize money by a few $1,000,000 isn't enough. Besides, the PGA Tour has been a bit stagnant over the past couple of decades anyway. But again, with the competition heating up, they've decided to make some pretty big changes in their operations. The first thing on their agenda is to return to a calendar year schedule rather than the current model that's more akin to a soccer league that's split over 2 years. And not only will this make things less confusing for the fans, but it'll also cap things off nicely at the end of each other. Other than that, the competitions are also finally getting a bit of love, as Monahan's announced a new 3-event international series in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, where top players come together and compete against each other. Sounds a bit familiar though, no? Well, yes, because actually, this is going to be a direct competitor to the LIV Golf Invitationals. Plus, they've also decided to switch up the FedExCup Playoff and put a greater focus on the best players. So, we've got a lot of all-stars type of stuff going on around here, with only the top 30 qualifying for its final round. And finally, Monahan says that the tour isn't worried about LIV Golf now. All of these drastic measures to try and compete with LIV Golf point towards some sort of panic among the tour's ranks. But according to the commissioner, there's really nothing to be afraid of. For him, the Saudi League isn't healthy competition. Instead, it's a bit of an irrational threat that's more about return on investment rather than growth of the game. And when sporting competitions don't have any soul behind them, they tend to die off pretty fast. On top of that, Monahan was also adamant that the traditions and the legacy of the tour go a long way when it comes to any player's decision making. Like, when someone joins Greg Norman's league, they've got to answer all these media questions about sports watching, and their entire career gets muddled in controversy. Over on the greens of the PGA Tour though, things are a lot smoother and golfers can fully dedicate themselves to the game. Besides, who doesn't want to write their name in the history books of this prestigious organization? That said, while the 52-year-old's words definitely sound reassuring for traditional fans, his actions don't seem to be matching up right now. And to actually compete with the LIV Golf Series, they're gonna have to continue to make big changes rather than feeding false hope to their fans. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think that the PGA Tour's done enough to go head-to-head against the Saudi League? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.